Welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast, where we feature conversations with entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and artists. Okay, welcome back to the Agents of Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Francisco Gonzalez, and I want to thank you for listening. We have a fantastic episode here today, a fantastic guest, Alejandro Storni, otherwise just known as Ale to many of us. Ale, welcome to the Agents of Innovation podcast.
Thank you so much, Francisco, for having me. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be part of your space and your podcast.
Oh, for sure. Well, we're going to get to why he is here and what he's all about in just a minute. But before we do, I want to let you know he's down in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where the Fearless Journeys community is going to be doing our second group trip in just a couple of weeks. We'll be there between April 9th through the 22nd for the official part of the trip. I'll be down there a little earlier as well. I always got to do my scouting, for the next year. So get some new adventures in. But if you're wondering, this is the Agents of Innovation podcast. If you are listening right now on Spotify or YouTube, or I should say on Apple or wherever else you get your podcast, you can also watch this on YouTube. And you could just go to the YouTube search engine, type in Agents of Innovation podcast and do that. But no matter whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on any of those platforms, please go and subscribe to the podcast so you'll be the first alerted to the next new episodes. But also, if you can, write a review, rate us, write a review. That really helps us more than anything else move the podcast so more people can hear Ale's story and hear the stories of the now, 139 people we've had on 139 episodes we've had here at the Agents of Innovation podcast. So thank you so much for doing that. And if you want to be more involved with the Fearless Journeys community, whether that means coming on one of our group trips, going down to Argentina like we're doing in April, going up to Dushore, Pennsylvania with Alexander McCoben, who was on episode 138. We're going to get to a little connection there with Ale in just a minute. We're going to be doing a Fearless Journeys, get yourself out of your comfort zone experience in the end of July. And then we're about to announce some more details, but little announcement here, we will be going to Peru in November. So mark your calendars back to one of our favorite continents, South America. So first group trip that we're going to be doing to Peru. But let's go to the other part of South America right now, all the way near the bottom or the top, depending on which side you're looking at the world. And that is in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where Ale is now. So Ale, I bring you on here for a few reasons. First, you're a great entrepreneur yourself. You've become a great friend. And for those who came on the first Argentina trip in 2023, you know that Ale was really an advisor and consultant to Fearless Journeys. We couldn't do so many of the amazing experiences down there without Ale's help and assistance and guidance and just all the great recommendations. And I can't tell you if you saw our WhatsApp text stream over the course of the last year and a half, you would be baffled by how many things we have going back and forth about Argentina and Uruguay as well, where he has some family and has spent some time. But Ale is in addition to helping us on these trips, he is also the leader of the company called Shock Your Cocktail, where he crafts immersive event experiences while championing the culture of Buenos Aires. And he's really has been involved in a lot of different avenues as well. He's been a respected educator at a university down there in Buenos Aires called UADE, which I believe is Universidad Argentina de la Empresa. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
exactly.
So that's basically the Argentinian University for Business. Is that how you would say it? Entrepreneurship,
exactly.
maybe?
Yeah, mostly about business, yeah.
Yeah, he's also been involved with the startup called Wimet, which was an inventive startup shaping, or I should say reshaping idle spaces for productivity and events. He sold that in 2018. We're going to get to a little bit of this part of his story. But he is really a guy who has everything about him is really about kind of helping people with just creating, amazing experiences. And he goes so well with the mindset and the everything the mission of Fearless Journeys is about. So I feel like some things you just think, how did this person get cross my path at some point? And it was really an amazing experience, Ale. But what I really want to tell the audience is that if you listen to episode 138, which was just the one before this, you heard Alexander McCoben. And Alexander was really excited to come down to Argentina and jump on a Fearless Journeys group trip, which he did last year. And this goes back at least a year and a half now. He was like, Francisco, what's the next group trip? I want to come on your next group trip. I said, well, I'm at the very beginning stages of planning something to Argentina. Oh, I want to go down there. I want to go down there. And within minutes later, after talking to him on the phone, he says, oh, by the way, you should get to know my friend Lucho. He lives in Buenos Aires. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So he connected me and Lucho. And then the next thing is Lucho and I start texting. Lucho says, oh, hey, where are you based? I said, I'm based in South Florida. Hey, my parents live in South Florida. Of course they do. Now Lucho was born in Venezuela, but has lived in the Washington, D.C. area. Then he moved to Buenos Aires, I think about a decade ago, where he lives and works for him mostly. And anyway, so literally about a month or two after Alexander connected us, Lucho was here in South Florida visiting his family. So we got together. And I mean, obviously, if you meet Lucho, he's an incredible, friendly guy. And then as we're talking, he's giving me like his top 10 hot tips about Argentina and what to do and where to go. He goes, oh, you got to meet my friend, Ale. And so that, by the way, was a game changer for me and for Fearless Journeys and everything we're doing in Argentina, because in my experience of working with Ale over the last, basically year and a half, there's nobody better, I feel like, in Argentina that I could have found. What a gem. They just landed in my lap. And some of these things, I always say, I'm a big believer in things like The Alchemist, in the book The Alchemist, that if all the universe is helping you, when you want to find something. And so I can't imagine having, found Ale, what a great guy, but also all the amazing experiences you've helped us craft in Argentina. So Ale, big lead up here for you. Don't disappoint the rest of the podcast.
I'll do my best, but still, thank you so much for this space. I'm quite honored, and at the same time, it is indeed a great pleasure to be part of Fearless Journey, to be a friend of you, Francisco. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm very excited for everybody that's coming back here to Buenos Aires, following you up. So yeah, definitely an amazing experience to live. And well, next year or whenever you come to, we will be back with Fearless Journey in Buenos Aires.
Yes, for sure. So, Ale, tell me a little bit. Were you born and raised in Argentina? Tell me about where you grew up and some of the experiences.
I'm born and raised here in Buenos Aires, but the thing is, my mother is Brazilian. So my family is kind of a mixture between two different cultures, which I always find it like one of the great things about my family, mostly because we spend even our holidays or our weekends, or maybe sometimes our birthday too, in different areas. And so it was kind of like having two different cultures, two different traits that just met and went together. And so when I was getting raised, that same thing also happened to me here in Buenos Aires, because Buenos Aires, it is kind of a mixture of different type of cultures, mostly after Second World War, which was like a big quantity of people that kind of wanted to live here in Buenos Aires, escaping some of the wars. And so Buenos Aires, I think it kind of grew up, or still it became what it is, mostly because of different type of cultures that all went all together and created what it is for us now to live here in this city.
So it's interesting when you look at the history of, let's say, Argentina, and if you want to even go a little more focused on Buenos Aires, but you have the Spanish coming there, right? When did they arrive? And do you remember when they arrived at Argentina? I mean, it's pretty far down there.
I mean, we'll say that it's 1500, the 1573, something like that, was when the first Spanish colonizer came to Argentina and settled down in Buenos Aires. And that's why it's called Rio de la Plata, Plate River, because when they arrived, they kind of felt that the water was so clean. I mean, between the rocks, it looked like silver. And
Mm.
this guy, Pedro Mendoza, once he arrived, he suddenly said that he wanted to settle down. He was not sure what it was at the moment. And so when they colonized most of the city and around, the ports became quite a big point for the continent, because until that point, even though they have went to the Cartagena de las Indias, which was mostly in Colombian side, which is upwards in Central America, this port, Argentinian port, became quite popular because of the roads that it went all the way to Peru, to Monte Potosí, sorry. And so this place that we kind of grew up and became so strong, mostly because of the resources that we were able to gather and to take into then to Europe, became like a main point of the whole Spanish colonizing area and era. And so the port itself, as becoming one of the most strongest points and commercial points in not only in the city but in the continent, became quite affluent of different cultures, mostly Spanish cultures, that just were arriving there and just trying to preserve what their own heritage or cultural heritage there in the city. And so between that and the mixture of what we used to have different natives that were living on the area, that became to settle down as the los mestizos, what we call like mixture blooded, something like that. And so these mixtures that from the Spanish crown kind of didn't still felt represented by the crown, but still were like a heritage or cultural heritage. When the attack, because we were at that time in 1807, and I think it was 1807, 1811, we were attacked 2 different times by the English or the English crown, and they were trying to attempt to take over the port or a commercial port, mostly because that was the main road for them to get to the different resources that were in the area, and they were up north. And so at that point, the I will say like the country, but still like the area became quite strong, and everybody defend their own country in a way that started to establish the idea of nationality. And so from that point forward, and mostly because of the different type of independence or revolutions that were going around, and mostly in the States in the 1776, I think for sure, that these proclamations of different independence, of trying to define their own identity, which in a way in Argentina was kind of getting stronger and stronger, mostly because of the different attacks that we were receiving, and mostly the successful defense that we had against the English people, gave us like a sense of nationality. And when the crown fell, the Spanish crown fell, when Napoleon put another person, I think it was his cousin, on the crown, and took out our proclaimed, or at least legitimate king, it gave the people the possibility to, because nowadays they didn't still preserve the heritage of the cultural heritage that we have received from Spain, and so it became a great proclaim to stay ourselves, our own identity, and that was meant and was known as La Revolución de Mayo, like May Revolution, which was in 1810 until the point that 1816 we proclaimed our own independence, the 9th of July of 1816, that we defend against Spanish itself. And so on that point and onward, we cannot still try to establish or to define what we were, which were no longer Spanish, but we were like a different mixture that were arriving there on the city and mostly on the area. And because of the ports, there was a great migration of different type of foreigners that was staying there. And so from 1876 until 1853 was a time of big definition in the country. Mostly there was a civic war until 1853 that we finally established our own constitution, and we became a federal government, because before there was range mostly by provinces. I think that something similar happened to the States, because
almost like where we had
because we have different
kind of under the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah, you got it. So in that point, we were still trying to establish our own identity. And so from 1853, which we finally got our own constitution, 1853 also our own president, and 1860 our own Democrat president, it became clear the path that we wanted to follow. And we always were, and I think we still are, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things of Buenos Aires, and mostly, of course, Argentina, is that we are a very open country. And I would say it's in our constitution, we give the possibility to any person in anywhere to inhabit our land and prosper. Because in the end, we have a very, very big country, and we are very few, and there's like a lot of space and lots of opportunities for people to grow and to prosper. And for a time, which was between the 1870s until the Second World War, at the very least, that was a very big, profitable place to be. Mostly first for the opportunities, because it was a developing country, and there was so many possibilities, mostly by crops and lands opportunities. But likewise, following the next years and advancing in time, due to the situations in Europe, mostly, Argentina became very, very rich as we call it, the grains of the world, or the crops of the world, because mostly the world was needing for different type of different foods, or at least nutritions for the countries that in that time were in different wars. And so I will say from 1890s or 900s until 1945, 1950s, Argentina was a very, very, very profitable country, was very, very profitable. And and because people got very rich, Argentinians also were, or at least the upper classes of the Argentinians, kind of got really inspired in European countries, mostly in different cities, and they brought back here to our city different type of inspirations, or at least cultural inspirations. And so suddenly, not only the neighbors were like building themselves or growing up themselves through their own identity of what was going on at that time, but also the mixture of what was going on abroad in the world. So we kind of became like a big point of connection of the cultural European heritage that we already had in the beginnings with Spain, and then suddenly, mostly because of let's say of land opportunities, but also throughout what we got inspired ourselves here in our heritage of our own country and the different mixtures. And so suddenly we kind of became quite an interesting point and an affluent point for culture of ourselves, which was always a very point and a very important thing for us to establish, which was the cultural thing, was what is meant to be an Argentinian. And in that affluence of different cultures, suddenly things came to arrive, and so we kind of created our own musical style, and we can say that it's not only Argentinian but mostly around the neighbor, because Uruguay is also like very similar to us in many points, but also our own culture and native heritage that for a time was completely like apart, like separated, mostly because of the Spanish colony. And so we all kind of got together to create our own folklore, which is our own folk music, but likewise our own tango music, which the tango music, it's always like an expressive and very passionate music, and mostly like a demanding music, like you gotta let yourself, your emotions. And so it's something that it really, really got into being Argentinian, which is, I would say, in many ways, and in good ways and in bad ways, the thing about being Argentinian, which we're very passionate people, and that passion, myself as an Argentinian, we create a lot of things that quietly define, at least nowadays, what it is important to us and the way that we live. So it's like,
my first time actually, obviously being there was last year, and you went through a lot of things there, but really great history. But one of the things, as you mentioned, was after you got your constitution, kind of in that late 1800s through maybe almost the first half of the 1900s. Like you said, that was like the kind of best time for Argentina up to this point, right? I mean, it's and when you go to Buenos Aires, especially where we're going to be staying with the group on this trip in the Recoleta area, we visited that area last time. I know you live right there in that area. It feels like you're in like Paris or something. And I was like, oh, I get why some people say this is the, Paris of South America, right? And I think what you mentioned there is the culture, a lot of the writers, architects, right? All these sorts of people that came from Europe in that middle to late 1800s that really started to kind of help craft the city a bit architecturally, but also culturally, right? Like you could actually kind of see a lot of the like coffee shops and cafes and things like that that kind of make you feel like you're a little bit in, maybe in France or Austria or something like that. And it's just a great I mean, for any place, I love all of Latin America that I've been to, a lot of countries, but there's no place that feels more European in Latin America than Buenos Aires. And then, of course, you mentioned the tango music, right? First of all, I don't think I'll ever be able to dance tango. I'm not really a great dancer to begin with, but we are going to be doing a dancing lesson on this trip. So here
Yes,
at
we are.
Fearless Journeys, we believe in getting ourselves out of our comfort zone. So we will be way out of my comfort zone in that hour or so of the dancing lesson. But last year we went to a fantastic tango experience. I know it was the Rojo Tango is the one we went last year. We're going to go to, I think, Gallo Tango this year. But man, we were just, I could tell you the whole group, I don't know, it was like an hour and a half show or something. We were just mesmerized the whole time. I mean, these dancers, the music that went along to it, I mean, so choreographed, so amazing. I mean, just amazing. And then I think as soon as it ended, we all just looked around and everybody was just speechless, taking our breath away. And that was just incredible. There's just nothing like watching a tango show experience, and I can't imagine, being able to dance that way as well. What amount of hours and years of practice that must take for those performers to do. So I don't know, Ale, I don't know how well you tango, but I'll leave it at that.
It's funny. It's like I dance a little bit. I think I got lucky because my friends don't dance, and I had to be honest with you. But it's like it's undeniable something that is very important to us. The other day I was also in Rojo Tango, and it's kind of feel like even though if you don't dance, it kind of feel like the tango dancing is like talking to your grandpa. It's something that is undeniable there. Maybe you don't share it nowadays, but you still respect it with a lot of heart, and it's like you feel moved every time you see it because it's something that's still preserved, but still there in your identity. It's like so when I was watching the tango the other day, I was like, wow, maybe I will dance it again, because at that time I was like eagerly looking for different type of artistic perspectives. But even though if you don't dance it, it's like you cannot avoid to feel it, and I think that it happened the same thing for you when you were there in Rojo Tango. It's like it's impossible for you to feel like moved or even inspired in so many ways. And I mean, and I have to say also, it is not as difficult as it is. I mean, on that level, it's almost impossible, us guys. But
Yeah,
if we think about just dancing it, I will not say that it's like Al Pacino in Sense of a Woman, but it's possible. It's possible. And the great thing about I always feel about tango, and this is like a nice point to share, is that it's a very intimate dance, which means like you really have to hold on your partner, and you really have to grab it in the sense that you have to share the way that you dance. It's not that you just dance and just move. You have to really feel like one on that point, because all the movements that you do are almost like they feel fluent because you kind of, on your own way, you kind of share it before you're doing that. So the other person kind of understands what you're doing before you're doing it. So because if you,
it's a very sensual experience, huh?
it is, and you think about it, when you know that when tangos, this it's more like a myth, but still like a great story. The tango dance is supposed to be started not with women, but between men,
Interesting.
and because they were waiting for them to get to different places that were around to meet people, and we call it like tertulias, or even like places more like nightclubs and let's say places of the night, but still like on that sense, people kind of dance and express themselves, and so dances started mostly between men. Then women, of course, got included in that because almost every tango was like an expression, or at least was a sharing of a thought or an emotion to somebody. That's why tango songs are always like very heartfelt and almost heart hurt, you know, like heartbreaks, and it's because it's always like connecting to your emotions through a song or through words. And it was really interesting because there were lines of people just to get inside, and because they were waiting for so much time, suddenly dancing started to abroad, and dancing is about somebody that they met and some women that they loved, and so suddenly the tango and the affluation and the different music's perspective and heritage that we were talking about, they all got together to create this type of dancing, which completely changed itself in the last 50 years, because it's not the same that it was in the 1930s when, for example, Gardel used to sing, which was a very famous singer in Argentina. And you think about then Astor Piazzolla or Mariano Mores, which are different styles that you kind of, even today, you even hear the style, which completely influence another type of music. And also they changed the conception of tango music too. So everything, like always, inspire and influence in another points. And so suddenly new things always try to arrive and try even to mend. So yeah, in that sense, it's like tangos are quite important in our lives, even though we don't dance them. Well, many people don't dance. I will not say that everybody, because tertulias or places that people get together to dance are still full, which is a great thing. But it always like
But
when
it
you
does,
suddenly
yeah,
hear, it's there.
it does kind of feel like when you're there watching it, it does feel like a throwback to like another era, right?
It
And
is.
even when you're there and you're watching the actual shows, the tango shows, you know, obviously they're dressed in different period wear and everything like that. So, um, kind of kind of giving you that nostalgic feeling in a sense. But also, you know, I gotta say, this is I think what, you know, maybe for some people it's going to Paris, maybe for some people it's going to Buenos Aires, but you get kind of a classier, you know, you kind of feel like you're in a classier spot, you know, like the music is a little more high level, it's a little more sophistication, you know, and that just, it just kind of has that kind of vibe, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, so it's like it completely like immerse you, you know, like it gives you like the complete scenery of what, you know, in many ways used to be Buenos Aires. And so the same thing happens. I think the other day I saw a post that you share, that you were talking about Buenos Aires is like a mixture between New Orleans meet Paris. And it is. You gotta grasp the sense of the culture, European heritage, mostly between the 900s and 1930s. Um, but at the same time, you get the idea of this glamorous or bohemian decadence that you got there also in the French quartiers there in New Orleans. And so, what is amazing about this is also that the idea of what it is to be a city, which I think happens, in my sense, in many beautiful cities around the world, is that when things happens in different neighbors, you kind of get the like grasp the not only the scenery, but the footprint of what happened at that point. And in our case, this beautiful style of New Orleans style that we were talking about is mostly because in the beginning everything was about our commercial ports, so everything grew up and thrived around the ports, and then after that, and mostly because of the Spanish flu, people which were in the upper classes, or the mostly our aristocracy or the rich people, kind of moved themselves away from that area, and due to the fact that they were getting richer, they bring and brought with them this European cultural heritage, and so they created their own style in similar or at least in influence of another cities in the world, just like Paris. And so it gave also this idea of what Buenos Aires in many senses could be, but at the same time mixturing a little bit with Argentinian style. And there's a beautiful short film that I will share to you once we finish the podcast, for you to have it. I even want to translate it for you so you have an idea. Is that even there we have this beautiful area which is like a Parisian or style or French style. We also have like Italian style because we have a great migration also from Italy, and we got from Polish and different countries around the European area, mostly because of the wars. And so we got different styles. That what is great is that one of them is next to the other one. So because our city was like prospering or growing, everything was like kind of created in a more spontaneous way. But at the same time, there was great urbanization and mostly prosper because our main architects at that time were quite, we were quite lucky that we were rich at that moment. And so we could create this city that we nowadays see and still thrive on it, even though our situation nowadays is complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's nice that when during a time that you had a lot of prosperity, that you kind of, I hate to say this, but you didn't waste the money on ugly buildings, right? I mean, you actually had nice, stylish architecture, and just kind of, like you said, in the last 20, 30 years, at least, Argentina's had very difficult times, and economically, but people still go there and go, man, this place still feels great. It still is great. It still has great resources. I mean, I know you got a great cattle and livestock industry. The steaks there are the best in the world. Right now, for us coming from a strong US dollar to a weak Argentine peso, I mean, it's unbelievable what we're getting the steaks for, right? I hope the value goes up for Argentinians, right? So you should be making a lot more money off us on these on this great quality food. You have we were in Mendoza on one of our parts of our trip last year. We're doing part B of our trip this year as well. In fact, I think it's the most popular part of the trip this year in terms of the numbers of signups for that one. And we even added an extra day. So we're doing 4 days this time instead of 3 days that we did last time. But I think when we were there, I was told in the Mendoza region, there's over 900 vineyards. And it's amazing to me because, I didn't realize it, you got to almost kind of be somewhere to realize how extensive. We went to the Uco Valley, which is, much lower elevation than some of the other places. And it was like an hour and a half drive from the city center of Mendoza to get to where we were at the Salentine Bodega. We're going to be back there again. So I was like, wow, this is just incredible, the amount of expansiveness that you have here in just this one little region, in a sense, in Argentina. And it was about a 2-hour flight from Buenos Aires to there. So just amazing resources. And then, of course, you have the entire Patagonia region down south, which is like 20 national parks in one, I think, right? I mean, it's just in terms of what we think of, just beautiful landscapes. In fact, as I was going here to put a new wallpaper on my computer recently, I noticed, Apple or whoever it is has all these things, and they have a whole bunch that say Patagonia, right? Like, because everybody just knows it's just an iconic region that you wouldn't, you would love to have as your background on your computer. So it's just an unbelievable country, and there's even other parts of it I haven't yet been to, right? So so I think, but anyway, going back to the point there that you have, during a time of much prosperity, you Argentina, really decided to devote a lot of investment in beautiful things that last. They're timeless, and so they've lasted for a long time. They're still there for us to enjoy today, and so that's really wonderful. But speaking of timeless, Ale, you've got an entrepreneurial story yourself, which I want to get to here because we've been talking so much about Argentina. We're going to be all the way through this podcast without getting much more of your story.
No worries.
Tell us a little bit. What was your evolution from education? Maybe I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about maybe how and you were educated, and then from the time maybe from that point on, high school, college, whatever. What was your next steps, and what led you to some of your early businesses that you were involved with?
Sure. So I was quite lucky that I got an idea of what I wanted to do in my life quite young. I think I was 17 at the time. I was not sure of what I wanted to do, and suddenly I got myself in a play at that moment at my school, and the play was really amazing. Was discovering like a new area of what I can do, and so from that point it kind of felt like main idea of trying to connect with people, trying to establish connections and even emotions with people through different type of possibilities. And so when I finished my high school and I went to university, at the beginning I was trying to understand what people really wanted and just trying to understand what was important. So I suddenly started psychology. So I studied for psychology for almost 3 years and a half, and at the same time I was trying to understand different artistic perspectives. I tried to broaden my horizons of understanding on that point tango and even different type of dances and theater and plays. And so on that mixture, I got my idea that I wanted to create different type of at that moment there was not the work experiences, but still the idea of trying to generate something for the person that was listening to me or hearing me, or at least being part of this situation. And so I went to study at my university. There was a new plan, a new course, a new degree, which was Business of Entertainment and Media. And I completely myself dive into that. So I left my career there in psychology. And so I got myself into that. And it's like it was a new door that opened up to endless possibilities, because I could get an idea or grasp an idea of going to create an event, or creating TV show, or even a video game. So suddenly there were so many different type of possibilities, or even channels for me to immerse myself, or even to get deeper. And so what I did was, and this was quite funny, because when I got there, I was like, I want to be a producer for plays and theatrical pieces. And when I finished my degree, I was mostly trying to create video games, which was the other area of completely this type of experience. And I was quite lucky, because on those years I was selected to go to Google. So I went with a scholarship to get to Google, sorry. And so I got my tuition there. And so suddenly my head was exploring with so many possibilities. At that time,
Were you in Silicon Valley there?
I was in Silicon Valley. Yeah, I was there I went first to Mountain View, to YouTube headquarters at the time, and then I went to Stanford, and then I went to Googleplex. And so I stayed there for a couple of days, and there was a lot of things that were going around, mostly trying to monetize YouTube, which at that point was not yet monetized. There was not still a commercial aspect, or still ads on or advertising on it. So there was really an idea of going to that piece and trying not to hurt what was the essence of YouTube. And at the same time, there were so many things going on in Google which were completely changing the perspective of such a search bar. And so suddenly I was like completely immersed of the possibilities with technology at that moment, that we were really like trying to get into it. And so when I came back, my idea was I'm going to create video games. I'm going to create mostly technological video games. So if I think about events and everything about that, was like, I'm not going to do events. I'm not going to do theater plays. That's it for me. That was a beautiful time of my life. And good things always happened because you kind of, even though you think about that life or destiny, trying just like you would talk about alchemist, it shows you the way, but not in the moment. But like you got the idea of your own road, as long as when you advance through it, and not at the perfect moments of time. At that moment, you sometimes like feel it, or at least trust in it. And so when I finished my degree, I did some postgraduate degrees. I studied like mostly more businesses or even production studies. And I got myself in video games, but first in animation, and I stayed there with great guys, which were creative at the very least. And they taught me a lot of things, mostly about companies and startups and the idea of a startup, because even though it was a well-known company, there were like, I think we were 12, like the most. And so I had to do a little bit of everything, and I kind of got the idea of a startup culture, or at least startup style, mostly like a lean startup. We try things, we change it up, we understood them, and then we change it, or we move forward. And I stayed with them for 2 years. And at the same time, more than idea, an opportunity emerged in Argentina. I'm a big like fan of movies, like completely. I completely love movies from all around. And so when I was younger, I watched a movie called The Game. I don't know if you have watched it, directed by Schumacher, Joel Schumacher was like, with Michael Douglas. And so
Yeah.
the idea of the sense of the idea that for one guy, they could create this whole experience or this whole idea and could completely change it because he had like his psychology grasp, and give this person the possibility of a change, like a possibility to abroad his perspective, or at least change it. It was like I was completely blown out of it. And so I got the opportunity by putting what we call infiltrated actors in events, which are people that, in a psychological sense, try to help the audience or the people that are there to have a greater time by becoming like actors, but at the same time guests. And so from that point, and due to my perspective, my artistic studies, I kind of put myself into more like immersive plays, which were not most like theatrical places, but mostly like what is now an immersive production or an immersive type of play, just like Sleep No More has there in New York. And so, but in many senses, without knowing really and just feeling it, I created this company called Shock Your Cocktail. And so at the beginning, it was like more like a side job, something like that I wanted to do in my spare time. And then one point, it became like everything, because from the idea of just putting actors in an event became the idea of also creating different type of music, different type of bands, and mostly throughout a concept that was, at the very sense, I think was required in a way for us to create immersion, or at least the idea of this how do you say it in English, like holistic concept, for you to really get into or dive into what was going on that space, and not just a moment in time or in a space determined. So this, at that point, which was a couple of years ago, it was like, at least in Argentina, was something that not many were doing that. And so I got lucky, and we started working a lot, and we work with the best brands, one of the best brands in the whole world. We were working with Shandong, which is a part of LMEVH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy group. And so we also work with different type of also Coca-Cola. We work all with Lindt, the chocolates, and we work with L'Oreal. We work with um, Shell and another type of companies. And we were lucky enough that we trust in our own craziness to create something different, which was not the same thing that everybody was doing, but we started creating in place. And we try to always create something new for each type of brand and each type of campaign that they had. And so, like in those years, because we were a big team, we can do like anything that you can imagine in an artistic sense. We created from plays to music shows to 3D and virtual reality immersions, and so it was like a mixture of a lot of things. And
So let me ask you something.
Yeah, sure.
So when you're talking about these immersive experiences and you worked with all these different brands, first of all, so two-part question here. How did you kind of reach out to and persuade some of these brands to work with you? And then the second part of the question is, can you give me an example of what you did for that brand? Maybe
Sure.
kind of walk us through that.
Okay, so I mean, things, once you start moving once you start doing things and I believe that you really trust and put yourself into it, great things always, I always think that great things happen, because it's like in your doing, there's a lot of you that you're saying, and or through your doing. So I give you an idea, which was one of the most amazing experiences that we got. So because we have the El Abierto de Palermo, which is like this polo tournament, and which is the whole year, and the Abierto de Palermo is like our final match that we have. And because polo is very, very, very renowned and very important, not only in Argentina, but I think throughout the world, but this match is a very eager match that everyone wants to see, because in our country, there's a lot of people that are quite good in handicap. And it is said that, and I believe it, but it has been said that our Abierto Palermo is like the final match of a World Cup, because our players have a great handicap, and the match itself is quite important. And so it became like a important place, or at least a beacon of polo tournaments. And so a lot of brands come to Argentina, and mostly luxury brands come to Argentina throughout this event to be part of it and have their own presence and, of course, their own positioning. And at that time, and for a couple of years, we were lucky enough to work with Jaeger-LeCoultre and Piaget, which are two different luxury watch brands. And so for both of them, we created two different things, of course. But for Jaeger-LeCoultre, we got to a place which is a beautiful palace, which is Palacio Duo. It's the Park Hyatt here in Buenos Aires, which has a beautiful garden. And the idea was to create a fantastical and magical immersion. So what we did was, because it's a beautiful garden, we put 6 different type of fans, industrial fans. We put I think it was 40 square meters of cloth, and we created this beautiful image, a beautiful flower image. And so we put different projections into the cloth, which was all white, and suddenly we changed the textures and the patterns, and we created our own musical style at that moment for that type of music, for people to really feel like they were more like in an avatar sense of world. And because it was polo, there was a big an idea of different horses around. And I was lucky enough to create a short film for polo, which was really good for me, because I was not really into polo at the time. And it was the first show film, at least in Argentina, and Jaeger-LeCoultre bought it, and which I was very, very lucky, because at that point I didn't see myself as a director, film director. And this suddenly gave me the possibility to create a short film and shoot it with these beautiful animals and with great people, and try to understand what their own story is. And they were, and I mean, I was quite lucky, because the guy that hired me at that moment, I was really very, very fond of him, came to Argentina because he was doing things there in the States, in Miami, and he was touring around with these brands. And he came and he trusted us because I think we were the most crazy ones. And I don't know, maybe he trusted because he saw, I don't know, something in our eyes,
it
or
is
we were
Latin
passionate.
America, you know?
Yeah. So, and suddenly I remember, like, we were not sure. I'm gonna be honest with you. He made me able to see this, and he will really laugh about it. But the many things that we said, they were all things that we really passionate thought about them, but not everything was created. So it was like on that time, and it still moved us on. Is that we were trying to move ourselves onwards, like trying to do every time something more like a little bit forward, like pushing ourselves. And so I think this innovation kind of gave us the possibilities for another brands to trust us also in our processes, because everything was new. Nothing was already being created. And it was always like our own theme, or at least our own ideal was always to create something new, because that was the best way for us to set ourselves apart from our own competitors, and at the same time to keep us on fresh, like still like pushing ourselves, still eagerly defining ourselves, or still like defying ourselves in order to generate always something new. And so we had to put ourselves in all type of ways, like a little bit like scary, but still
Yeah.
put ourselves in something new all the time. And it was amazing. I think that was the way for us to work with all different brands, because once you get there, like you get one, and you do your job, you do it good. It's not just because of the opportunity that you have, but also that you did well. It gives you like another spaces or another brands or even another places for us to move ourselves. And so I think that was one of our mostly pushing ourselves innovations. And if I show you the first sketch that we had and everything, it was like thrilling. It was like, it put
Well, what's
ourselves
interesting
into.
to me, what's interesting about that story is, first of all, you guys got together and you did something new and creative that like nobody had done. But also part of that story, you said two things. You said you weren't into polo at all up to that point. Like you didn't have even very much knowledge, I guess, from what I'm gathering. So you had to kind of learn a little bit about that in order to kind of showcase the experience. And then you also said you had not done any film before as a filmmaker, and so you had to kind of learn that, right?
I was lucky that I did a couple, I never did it like a profession. I did like in school and university, like different subjects that we have, courses that we have at the time. And so I did like a little bit of shooting, but I never done it like in a professional style. So I got a great team. I got a great team with me, which helped me a lot to push our vision or our idea of what we want to do. And at the same time, because I didn't know anything about polo, or at least not much about it, it was a great opportunity for me to show the same story that I believe was, in a sense, also a situation for a lot of people. So it showed like the polo of what it really is, and at the same time, like an introduction, or at least a sense of what polo it is right now, for people which are not connoisseurs or do not follow it. And so we had to take a lot of different interviews. We got also interviews for different brands that gave us the editing too. So we watched a lot of material, and we shoot also a little bit of it with different persons that we find it like very, very interesting for them to show and share their passion. And so with all that different type of materials, we got together. We got a very beautiful 7-minute short film, which after that, Shegel could show it all around the world and put it on different type of events. Well, I mean, like different polo events. And I know this was like touring around also with them for a couple of years. I don't think it's anymore, but still was like was in a sense, and I bring it back to, it's like your road or your path always seems clear once you look it back. No, not at the moment, but at least that was for me. So if I haven't yet taken those artistic studies when I was younger, or had the play opportunity, or even I studied psychology, at least for a couple of years, I would never maybe have understood the way for me to shoot that film, or even to create that event, or even know who to talk to, or how to gather, or even how to put everything together to generate that piece or that artistic moment. So it's like everything kind of see its way as you move forward, and you only know the idea of what you have to do, and so you move and you keep on moving. And that's how really Wimet was formed, or the idea of Wimet was created, was because we were
Women
doing
is the
so many.
startup.
Wimet is a startup, yeah. So at that moment, we were doing a lot of things, very amazing things, and we were doing this in different scenarios, on different locations. And I only worked with that location just for once and never again. And was like, man, this place is amazing. It should be used more. And there was a person in the way that, like, hired the location, or at least showed the location. And I always thought that in many senses that was like tough for the person that was the organizer, or the person that was looking for a place like that and never knew how to get to it, because maybe the place itself, it didn't say that it was maybe rented for, or you can rent it for a day, or for a couple of days, or even for hours. And at the same time, the person that had the place available didn't know how to move it or rent it a little bit more without having this particular person just showing it around. And so when I saw this, and at the same time, that was like 2016, there were tough times also in Buenos Aires or in Argentina. I also thought that if you have a great place, you can do a lot with less. You don't have to really create an ambience. Maybe the place itself just tell you the story that you want. And so I found that maybe there was a niche for it. And I got with, in that moment, my partner, which he was also creating events, mostly in traditional spaces. And we saw together that there was a great opportunity for us to really immerse ourselves in that road. And so that's how Wimet was created, like a startup for people that was eager or looking for different type of spaces, or spaces that were at the very least already artistic. And so we thought that it was a good idea, and so we created for productions, events, retails, and pop-ups.
So that's great. I mean, so as I described your company at the beginning, just to reinforce that for people listening, Wimet, is an inventive startup that was reshaping idle spaces for productions and events. You remind me of two young women I had on the podcast like 6 or 7 years ago, and I actually write about them in my book. The American Dream is a terrible thing to waste. They created this place here not too far from where I'm at right now in West Palm Beach, Florida, called Elizabeth Avenue Station. Their names are Danielle Casey and Danny Mitchell. But they did the same thing. They actually took this idle warehouse, and their idea was, actually what happened is they were both graphic design artists. I think the stories of entrepreneurs like yourself and them, they're not that dissimilar in a way that you have this other whole background, like you were mentioning, where you went to school for something, or you had some kind of opportunity, or you had some skill you learned along the way, or maybe something you did for some other kind of job, and you never see like where this is going to take you in the future or something bigger. And for them, it was just they had this like graphic design background, much more high level than me going to Canva and trying to put things together. So one of them was getting married, and she was looking for a space to get for her wedding, and she didn't want like a ballroom at a hotel, or she wanted to do something different than a church, I guess, or the beach or whatever, like something totally different. And she said, I wanted a place that could be a blank canvas for my artistic mind to go to work and literally design my own wedding space, which just sounds to me like a lot more work, for a wedding space. But they found this old warehouse in an industrial area of West Palm Beach, and they redid it. And while they were doing that, they just had an idea like, hey, what would be cool is if we could have this be a creative space for artists. And artists, you know, they want to be creating. They don't want to be having to sit there and sell their merchandise in a store or whatever. So they created this space for these people, for artists to just put their things. They kind of each have like almost like a little booth or something, you know, a little space within this larger room. And then they didn't have to man it. They would, you know, Elizabeth Avenue Station hired somebody to man the whole place. And so if somebody walked in and they wanted to buy something from, you know, your space over there, great. We see how much this costs and we could do it for you and we could get you the sales. So, but anyway, but the whole point was, you're seeing this in a lot of different cities where people are taking kind of abandoned places, idle places, like you're saying, and reshaping them. And I just recently, you know, I was in a conversation with somebody in Miami, and they were talking about similar things, like what's going to happen with some of this. Miami's actually in a fortunate position. There's very few places of real estate that are vacant right now in Miami, right? They're trying to build more things, but in a lot of cities, there's a lot of idle places. There's a lot of right now commercial office space that people aren't using. You know, after the pandemic, a lot of people didn't go back to these offices. So do we reshape them into residential spaces? Maybe. Do we reshape them into other kind of spaces? Maybe. But somebody made this point in this conversation to me. They said, the thing is, when you allow entrepreneurs to do something with those spaces, they're going to find a way to reuse it somewhere else. So don't count those spaces out. And I think you're an example of that. I mean, in what you guys did here with Wimet. Is that Wimet? Is that how I say it? Wimet?
Wimet.
Wimet.
Yeah.
Wimet. But anyway, Ale, so you then exited Wimet at some point, I think in 2018. What was your decision point there, and what was your next kind of step?
Okay, so when I decided to exit myself, when I decided to approach a possibility and exit, I got the idea that this is like crazy, because it almost like was a follow-up of what already was doing Wimet. So at that point, I was completely understanding that people need help, even in small possibilities or even in small areas, just like doing an event, because sometimes it's too much, you know, like sometimes there's so many possibilities that just happens when you, I don't know, maybe go to one of these entertainment platforms and just kind of see yourself like zapping around of what to watch, and there's maybe too much and you just follow back to what you already have. So what my experience or my feeling or at least my understanding of what happened with Wimet at that point was that there were a lot of different type of consultants, or at least questions that we had, but were so many resolutions to those questions, because there were like people, the ones that they would have this space available didn't know how to answer them back or even prepare what they needed for their own clients, and the clients sometimes didn't know how to express themselves or even to share their vision. So I finally understood that what we needed was that, because this city had a lot of entrepreneurship and had a lot of people already producing and creating beautiful experiences, is that many of them, mostly in the independent, outside of the mainstream, you know, independent currents or even independent vibes, there were so many type of productions that at least were not quite well known, or didn't have the communication on this, or at least the voice that they really need to in order to reach their niche or reach their audience. I understood that there was a great possibility in this for them to show what they wanted, but for people that really wanted that, and not just for everybody. Because if it was shown to everybody, it would lose their own power. And so what I did was I created an online magazine, which was in its own intention trying to curate everything that was going on in the city. And at the same time, and this was my master's degree thesis, I created an algorithm that could help people in few questions to understand who they were, in order to show them what they really wanted in, let's say, in entertainment experiences. Okay, so what I did was, in order for us to give you what you want, I had to at least in the very least, know you a little bit, so to understand what really is, like, what you're looking for. And at the same time, I was trying to grab or trying to get along with everything that was going on in the city in order for me to curate everything that was great, which gave me the possibility to know the owners, the production managers, and even the artistic place authors that were going on, in order for me to share them, or at least create this channel for them to have a better sales and, of course, better trajectory, because many things was going on and were great, but they were too ephemeral. They were very short in time, and suddenly, because it's a very it's a very common mistake for an entrepreneur to put their own passion and everything into the production, into the creation of the work, but not into the communication, and don't leave that much money, or at least that much resources to channel those broader audiences. It gave us the sense that we needed to put ourselves there. So that's why I created this magazine called Cultura, CoolturaBA, which is Cultura Buenos Aires. And so through that magazine, I tried to create a language and a channel to younger audiences that were looking for this type of spaces, but didn't know how yet to get to them, because they were at least outside of the mainstream, or outside of what you already know as being a porteño, a guy that lives in the city. And so I created this magazine, and throughout different type of course, productions that we did, we got to know, to get along with a lot of people that at the same time, it's the same thing that happened with brands. Once you started working, or you work it with one and they share it, another type of even entrepreneurs, which were almost in the same thing or similar, wanted to get into us. And so we started working with them too. And so suddenly we did like anything that you can imagine. We tried to cover it, from Cataños, which is a very important DJ, doing his own first sunset here in the city of Buenos Aires, until we did also plays in factories or very small industrial spaces that were only for 25 persons, but they were amazing and very well known, and were with, with transgender people, by singing lyrical song, which was something like completely, at least outside of the box, or at least outside of the normal things that you might see in Avenida Corrientes, which is like our big avenue here of theatrical and commercial place. And so it was like a very, very, very interesting time for us to really get into our own culture as here in the city, and also trying to at least understand. I have to be honest, I don't even think I got to 1% of everything that happens in our city, because it's too big. There's too many things going on.
Let me tell you this. Listening to you here and getting even more of the full Ale story, and I know it goes even deeper. We're an hour in here. We could go many more hours, I'm sure. But and knowing all the great experience you've helped us with Fearless Journeys, I kind of always joke, but it's not really a joke. I think it's like for real. I'm like, Ale knows everybody in Argentina, right? I mean, it's just like this is probably why, right? You've had all these different kinds of experiences, especially with this magazine, some of the branding things, working with some of the companies, some of the, working with some of these idle spaces, trying to bring different talents together. So you've just got, could you say something to the effect of maybe the importance of relationship building, and like, what has kind of been your kind of mindset, or your just the type of view you have on building relationships, and how have you seen that kind of play out, where maybe things have helped you in other ways, maybe not for the direct reason or purpose that you first connected with somebody?
Yes, I mean, I think that everything is about relationships. Like it's the most important, not even traits, I would say, it's the most important quality that we can have between us human beings. Is like everything's there, because there's so much learning that we can really get into once we know the other person. And there's a lot of things that the other person really contributes to yourself, not just because of the work, but mostly because of life. And so when I try to get to know even a client or even a friend, it's like I always try to help them out, like try to contribute them in a way, because I think that we're here just to help each other, like I think in the sense of it's our most important job. It's like to really help each other to have a better life, to have a better quality of life. And even so I mean, like I did like a lot of things that I will not say that I mean do it for work, like all the plays, all the experiences, the theatrical shows, the shows that been done just for one day and a couple of hours, and then they were disassembled, and there was no more about that. But I made so many friends just because I was a privilege, like just by doing what I felt I wanted, and at the same time, there's no better, and at this I believe it with all my heart. There's no better feeling than to put something of your heart to something that you have in yourself and share with somebody, and the other person feeling it, something just like you did. Like I was very lucky when I was young that I went a lot to the States, because when I was young, we had the $1, 1 peso. It was like a fantasy time in Argentina. So we were lucky that we could travel abroad and go almost everywhere. And I was lucky enough that I was a kid in the 90s. And so I grew up watching different type of movies, mostly Disney movies, which was the time of the different masterpieces. And then I went to Disneyland and went then to Disney resorts and in Orlando and different Disney parks. And so I got like the idea and the importance of just sharing an emotion, like just trying to change somebody for the better. And that's what I've been trying to do in my own ways, in my own style, and with my own heart and passion to it. It's like, so if I think about it, it's like I have a lot of friends. I want to say I have a lot of clients. I have a lot of friends that that became my friends mostly because they trusted me, and they share our own passion. So relationship nowadays, I think it's the most important point. It's our daily basis, and so yeah, I think I'm putting our
Yeah.
hats. It's that.
Well, I think also, I mean, the way you treat people, and I'm saying that broadly, but I'm also saying that about you, where like you just said, yeah, these are my clients, but I look at them more as like these are actually my friends, but also that that your approach to trying to help people, it's also just a smart way for any entrepreneur to act or behave or carry themselves out. It's because at the end of the day, you're trying to bring value to other people. When you bring value to other people, you're going to be rewarded as well. And maybe you're doing it for the rewards, but I think also just when you really are passionate about something and you put all your love and passion into it, I think it's going to show, and people are going to see that, and they're going to respond very greatly to that. And so when we think about, no matter what we're doing, maybe we're an entrepreneur, or maybe we're just a salesperson for a company, or working customer service somewhere, or like whatever, you really got to have people feel like you actually care about them, that you're not just a number, you're not just a client, and really you're in it for them. And you talk about going to Disney in the 90s or whatever. I actually worked at Walt Disney World in the late 1990s when I was in
Really?
college. Who knows? Maybe I put you on a ride, Ale. I used to work the
Good.
the Skyway ride with the little gondolas. That's no
Yes.
longer around, but that was my main job there. Although I
Really?
ran a lot of
Wow.
rides. Yeah, but
We got even more things in common,
Disney,
you know.
yeah, Disney though, one of their things they've done forever is they're so intentional about everything in the parks and in the movies, and just how they do things, that their customer service is just another level. And it's because they don't call people customers. That is not part of the language. The first 2 days you work at Disney, you learn It's like an orientation process. And by the way, they don't even call it orientation. They call it traditions. That's what it was called when I did it. I don't know if it's still call it that. And because what they're really doing, and I hate to say this, but they're really kind of indoctrinating you as an employee. And again, they don't call you an employee. They call you a cast member. Even if you're not acting, even if you're not a character, everybody that works at Walt Disney World, from the janitor to the person making your hamburger to the person putting you on the ride to the character, they're all called cast members. Why? Because they're in a great big show. And we welcome not customers but guests. When we see the guest, we're on stage. You know, when we're back in the office, when nobody can see us, that's called backstage. So the whole mindset that Disney has, but it's about because they really want to make you feel like they care about you in every sense of the way. They want you to have what they call a magical experience, right? So anyway, but I think that's what you do. You help everybody I know with Fearless Journeys have a magical experience in Argentina. I didn't want to leave Argentina. I don't know if it was you or if it was every place you were taking us to, or it was
You're too kind.
the amazing steaks, the amazing beauty of the landscape and everything. But I said, man, I don't think I'm going to leave Argentina. So, but the other great thing about Argentina is, like, you're right, people, it's a country that's been very open for a long time. Obviously, you have the ports and everything like that, and you have waves of different kinds of immigrants over the years. I know every time I turn around, it's like there's such an Italian influence in some corners. There's such a German influence in some corners, maybe some French influence, obviously Spanish influence. And so there's just wave after wave, Jewish influence in some parts, right? So you just kind of keep seeing the different things and people as difficult times as Argentina's having right now, right? I mean, 100 years ago, this Argentina was looked at as in a very similar light of what people looked at the United States at that time, as a land of opportunity, right? The American dream, the Argentinian dream. It was, I think, one of the top 10 or so economies in the world at
I
one
think it
point,
was
right?
six. Yeah, six.
Number six.
Six
Yeah.
developer
So
slow country. Yeah.
obviously, we don't have to get into politics or economics here, but maybe if they could turn some monetary policy around, get some more sanity into the economic policy, like I know Malay is trying to do right now, and it's a real challenge no matter who's in leadership there, but it's an interesting time nonetheless in Argentina, and I see a place of a lot of hope. Now, I've just talked a little bit about Argentina, but Ale, I want to ask you a couple last questions here, because I want to be respectful of your time and our listeners and viewers as well. But I wanted to ask you too. You mentioned before about going abroad. I know you've spent a lot of time abroad. I have written down here that through a previous conversation, you said you had been to 41 countries in your life. I also know, I think one of your parents maybe has a residency or a residence in
In
Miami,
Uruguay.
and
Yeah, Miami. And
oh,
Miami.
and
Yeah.
in Uruguay,
Yeah.
So you're very helpful to us in Uruguay as well. You knew everything about Uruguay, small country,
Oh,
but when you
yeah. I
spend a
was
lot of
lucky
time
to.
there, you get to know. But I know I saw you in Miami. You were here for about a month or something last year, a few months after we first met in Argentina. So two things. Tell me, the first question I'm going to ask you is about Miami. Obviously a place, I've been calling it, as some have been calling it in recent months and years, the capital of Latin America. And I think some of us say that because you kind of look at it geographically and you go, well, is it really in Latin America? It's in North America, right? And Latin America is a different physical geographical location. But of course, you have people from everywhere in the world are in Florida, and Latin America really dominates Miami. I think Spanish might be the first language, definitely in many neighborhoods in Miami. But you've got wave after wave of different countries. Obviously, my dad's from Cuba, so you got tons of Cubans. You have everybody. You have Argentinians, Colombians, Venezuelans now, lots of Venezuelans. So just tons of people. But tell me, what has been your experience with Miami throughout the course of your life as an Argentinian?
Wow. I mean, Miami has grown in a couple of years so much, and I think that also the pandemic situation was really a boost for you guys. I always felt like Miami is like it's like Constantinople of another time,
Yeah.
which means it's a complete mixture of two different and very different type of cultures that just got together. I think that they have created something really beautiful, and it's true. And my dad is quite happy that you don't have to speak in English once you get to Miami, and you can move yourself and even understand everything just by speaking Spanish, which is amazing for us. And it has grown so much in the last years. I mean, it really became more like the headquarters of, or even a beacon of innovation, of Latin American dreams, I would say. And at the same time, it gave also, I think, the people from the States like a beacon also of a higher quality of life. And I think that the quality of life itself has always been there because Miami, and I think that for a long time, the year has a great weather along. And I think that what happens was it had changed, or at least evolved from a touristic city to a headquarters of innovation that I think it's been challenging the big states or even the big cities of United States. So it's more than just a place to be. I think it's a place that you want to be, and in my sense, I mean, and I got to be honest, I find it always very, very, very interesting and mostly very easy for you to move around because everything, and I think that that's one of the great things about the United States. It's everything easy for you to manage yourselves, and you kind of have a great logistic and idea of distribution that it's amazing. I think that if you go here to Argentina, you'll find yourself that streets are kind of difficult sometimes to move yourself. But at the same time, it's still like developing itself, and I think it's going to change a little bit more in the few next years, mostly because it's completely defining itself again, and it's completely changing itself from a city that still you move around in cars to a city that you might be moving around in public transportation, and even yourself by just walking around, because neighbors are completely growing itself and not just becoming like distribution centers, but more like places for you to want to move yourself around. And I've seen that change in the last years, and I think that's one of the best things, mostly because I love to move. I love to move myself by walking, and sometimes I do not find myself there in Miami because you get to the car, you move from point A to point B, and I think that's going to change itself. And I think it's already happening in the north and in the south. It still have not yet passed happening. It's happening on the middle of Miami, or at least what we call North Miami. But the public transportation, the possibilities that you now have with these new type of trains, it's completely, I think, changing the perspective of the city's magnitude. And I think that the innovation that is going all around the city, and also, of course, the population the migration that is going into the city, it will change completely the idea of the city, which was for a long time a touristic place for you to go or a place for you to relax. And nowadays it's going to compete ourselves, at least with the idea of work, the balance of work and happiness, let's say it like that.
Yeah, recreation or so. Yeah, and by the way, I find it interesting for people who are maybe from Miami or South Florida. When you said it's easy for you to move yourself around. I think more and more people feel like it's harder to move yourself around because of all the congestion and the traffic, especially at rush hour. But you know what? I spent a lot of time in different Latin American cities, including Buenos Aires and Bogota and Mexico City and Guatemala City and all these places, Panama City. I've been all these places, and it's so much traffic, right? And I think part of it is some of these places, people kind of they kind of went in, they got more prosperous. The countries have got more prosperous, more people more prosperous, which means what? More cars, more motorcycles, more people on the road. And the cities weren't developed that way in such a sense. So I think they're so clogged especially during the rush hours, or sometimes even all day in some of these cities. Miami, I kind of see it more during the rush hour, and we are getting creative, right? We've got these express lanes, like you said. We got more public transportation between the Tri-Rail and the Bright Line and all these things, but also something else you said. There's a lot more development, and you said we're going to see more. We're going to see a lot of changes in the next few years in Miami, and I mean, probably every time you come visit, right? Because you're kind of here maybe once a year. More buildings, right? It's just like another 5 huge, tall office buildings just went up or whatever. More apartments are going up, more condos are going up, and it's just the skyline has just continued to change. And yet, what people don't realize is there's actually a lot more room to build when you kind of really start to get around and go, oh, actually, yeah, they have a lot of space here. Actually, they could put more buildings. But what's cool is recently, especially in downtown Miami and Brickell, I mean, I've been able to walk around. I have literally walked around by myself at night in a suit between events, 20 minutes across that in places where, let me tell you, 10 or 20 years ago, I would have never been walking by myself. I would have been maybe running to the car or something like that. But I've been like really surprised how safe it is, how clean it is, how walkability it's getting. And I think it's only going to get better. And that's what I love about Buenos Aires, right? I mean, it's just, you just have that, that sense of, it's such a great, beautiful, walkable city. I remember Ale last year before our group trip when I was doing some scouting the week before I got there, and I was staying in the Recoleta, and I said, you kind of told me I could go over to Palermo to kind of scout it out. And I kind of looked on the map and said, that's probably about a 30 or 40-minute walk one way. So I'll just walk until I get tired, and then I'll take an Uber. And then I walked there, and then I walked another way, and all of a sudden I was walking for 3 or 4 hours, and I walked all the way back home, and it just kind of felt like it flowed so nicely as a city. So I think that's kind of a nice design. But yeah, traffic wise, trying to get across some parts of Buenos Aires, it could be a long time.
Yeah, it's like the city, and I think that this was a great thing that our fathers of the city kind of knew or understood. We were the first country in South America to put on metros in the city. And because we understood the idea of just walking around the city and just moving yourself through public transportation more than cars. And I think that was one of the best things that we could do, because the city didn't prosper from one point to the other one, but just prosper itself all around. And likewise, the European migration, or at the very least the idea of what was going there, it completely felt that it was important for us to move ourselves. And if you think about it, when the city was still establishing itself, all the neighborhoods for some moments were like retreats or farms that people kind of went for the summer, or went to relax, or even to recreate. And so that's also something quite beautiful, because many big manors or big houses were like resting spaces or recreating spaces or summer houses of the people that were in Recoleta, for example, and more in the south. And like also, Recoleta was also very important because it was also the richest point of the south, of people that have their own farms and crops. And so it was very interesting how the city started to grow itself, but at the same time, the idea of how urbanized it always went, it didn't go just from point A to point B, but by amplifying the point A a little bit more until it gets to the retreats. And that was something like very interesting, because it gave the feeling of fluency that you were talking about. And then the other thing is that for every square that appears, I mean, like, something I have to say of our Argentinian people is that they're very resilient. They have a fighting spirit within. We are, sadly, I will say it, but we are very used to crisis. And so we always put ourselves into the measure of our own spirit by trying to thrive in our unique situations, economically and financial situations, in order to move ourselves on. And I always find almost moving and passionate, to see that even though things are not quite good for us in the last years, and it was by last years, I want to say like 20 years, you always see like for every space or corner that it's open up or is open to rent, you will find a new cafe, you will find something new there. And I always find it like very, very moving and also like very inspiring, you know, like because I was a child in 2001, which was my big crisis, when the dollar completely fell and the peso completely fell and lost their value in comparison to the dollar. And I saw a lot of things that were crazy at that time. And on the last, let's say, 23 years, I've seen like cycles of different economical recessions and even crises. And so, but what I always saw in each situation was always entrepreneur mindset, you know, like there's always a possibility, there's always an opportunity there, and you have to put yourselves forward and try to create and try to put something to the market that will be valuable to the people. And that is very, very powerful. And that's, I think, is like, even though it's a tough experience to grow up in that type of situations, it's an incredible trait for us to have it within us, because it gives us the mindset to keep on pushing ourselves forward. And I always find it like something that it's completely like I say, inspiring of my own people, and you will see it almost in everything, like that passion that in a sense quits us from intellectuality or keeps us from let's say how you say it, like calm postures. It's always something that moves us forward in terms of, you cannot push yourself sometimes by being so rational, because our economy is not rational. You can push yourself by believing or creating something that you truly care about it. And even though we have like craziness in our soccer fields, on soccer stadiums, and even though that's something like, yeah, and it moves us also in our economical instability, and even in our movements, political and social movements that we have, I think it's also a force of, it's a powerful force that moves us and leads us to be the people that we are in so many ways, in the good ways and in the bad ways. And it's something that it's within us, you know, in our spirit. So yeah, it is. I don't know. I just move myself. I don't answer your question, but it's something that it's within us, and it's a beautiful trait. I will not say that it's always the best trait, but it's something that is inside us, and it made us who we are. So
yeah, well,
you know, like
no, the Argentinian people are great people. You're great ambassador for that and for that spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit as well. So it's really great. So Ale, we've got just a few more minutes here, and I got a lot of things I'd like to ask you, but I did know maybe you can talk about this really quickly. I know it's probably
sure.
tough to talk about quickly, but you mentioned two experiences to me offline that you've had in the past that were maybe formative or interesting. One was when you were living in Paris, and the other was when you had a startup investment by the Chilean government. So maybe you could talk
Yes,
about those two stories very quickly.
sure. So after I did my postgraduate courses, I wanted to keep on studying, and so I did my master's degree here in Buenos Aires. But I wanted to try and live a little bit abroad, and so I found this opportunity that the university gave me to study abroad, just by finishing up my degree there. And so I went to live to. I tried to get myself into different universities, and I was lucky enough. I got myself into Paris. I went to study there. Which was an amazing opportunity and an amazing experience, because I learned so much about French people, but also about cultural, and it really nurtured me, and also showed me what it is to be a Latin American in an European country, which makes sense that we are quite loud, or at least I'm very loud. And you know, sometimes I was in French class, and I was like putting myself into it, you know, like really get into it, and sometimes I was like, relax, speak lower, please. And so I started to learn a little bit of it, and so a little bit of French culture, at least.
You might should have gone to Italy or something,
Yeah.
Maybe you would
Well,
have
my
a little
first
more
university was trying to get myself into Milano, but I got into Paris. So yeah, it was not a bad agreement, but still, I was trying to get to Reno at least, get myself into my Italian roots. My from my father's side, they're Italian, so I was like, I'm going to Milano. I'm going to study there. It's quite near to my grandparents' hometown, so maybe I'd be there too. So, but it was Paris, and in so many ways, it was amazing because I had the opportunity to learn from incredible professors that were in different incredible brands, mostly luxury brands, and so I got to understand how they talk, which always I kind of have worked with them, but always like in a campaign or in a determined action or intervention that we had to do. But now I could understand their own language, or at least understand a little bit more and have a deeper understanding. And so that gave me the possibility throughout the courses and everything, gave me the possibility to work there because the professor was working in one of the big companies there, was in L'Oréal Paris, and so he was kind enough to give me the opportunity, or at least present me there for different interviews. And so and I just did it because I was like, I don't know, I was just open for the experience, and at the same time I was beginning to establish or even to create in that point Wimet. And so, but I was still haven't yet defined, or I still haven't yet decided what I was going to do. I only knew I wanted to study a semester there in Paris. And so when I was there and I went forward in different interviews, and I got to the final interview, and suddenly I got the possibility to work there. At that time, my company got selected or got elected by the Chilean government, the Corfo, which is like their own Ministry of Work and the Ministerio de Trabajo. We say it's Ministerio de Trabajo. So the work government or work minister gave me the possibility to invest in my company and develop it in Chile. So suddenly I was living in Paris, and I had to go back because it was a big shot for us. And so I went there. So I came back to Buenos Aires as I did all the paperwork that I had to do. And I went there to live to Santiago, Chile. I spent more than 6 months there living. And I have incredible experiences because there we were from all around the world. We're not just Argentinians or even Latin American countries. There were people from all around the world. There were Russians, there were Spanish people, there were Maltese people. There were, like everywhere. So it was like a big, incredible hub of innovation and opportunities. And you kind of get yourself like completely influenced and also inspired by different stories and different startups. And so we did like different courses there, and we got invested in so many stages. And we even got one of the professors to invest into our company as an angel. And from that point, I was going from Argentina to Santiago, Chile, up and forward. And so we were thinking about going also to Mexico. So suddenly the company was looking a little bit more like regional. And I was like, wow, this is like a lot. And so they were like.
And which company was this?
There was at the time when I was with Wimet. So we were getting awards there in Argentina because it was a good idea at the time. And it was very nice, to get recon about that. And then I came back and forth between Santiago and Buenos Aires. And then an angel came, and I got the possibility to talk with my partner through different points of view. I thought it was the best thing to exit. And so that was an incredible moment, but still in time, like when you look back, I was like, wow. I last year I was there in Paris. I went there for a holiday, and I was like, well, I almost live here. So we will see, what happens in life. again, we never know exactly where life will take us. We just know what are the small steps that we take every year, and every step may take you near to those places or give you opportunities to there, and you will decide once you get there. But I mean, like, I'm eager for everything that will be coming, and I'm still very glad I have a good relationship with my ex-professor at the time. I was like, we should have a coffee, and so I was like, it was a great moment, and I always go back to that city and to Paris, and always try to immerse myself, feel like I will not say a Parisian, but a guy that lives here, and it always gives me back. And I'm very happy because I know you know it better than anyone, that by traveling yourself around the different cultures, the different cities, the different countries, it really brought not just your knowledge or your understanding, but also brought your spirit and your cultural fondness, like your cultural identity. You're no longer I would say, like an American. I'm no longer like an Argentinian. Still being an Argentinian, still being my heart, and also, of course, part of my identity. But as you move yourself abroad and you travel, so many things and so many people, like and activities and moments that just really, dive into you and really change you in so many ways, So, and I think that's one of the best things about Fearless Journeys is that it gives you like the perfect excuse for you to move and just to learn something new, not just about the country, but about yourself. And I think that, well, it's one of the best things because life, I think, always is about living, like about feeling and about enjoying, which sadly many times that we got stuck in a routine, we kind of, like repeat day after day. And so I always think that, well, your work and traveling around and just enjoying it, it gives you much more than just visiting a place,
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned a bunch of things there, but I think when you lived there in Paris long term and spent a lot of time in Santiago, Chile, much more than just passing through for a week or something, you really get to, learn more about the culture and the people and the place a lot deeper. So that kind of travel is really great. That kind of a little bit more, and it wasn't just travel, right? It was actually being rooted in a place for at least longer term than just passing through. So I think that's kind of a really great way to see its place. But also, I think we're talking about what we're trying to inspire here, maybe at Fearless Journeys, is helping people learn from other people. People around the world have a lot of different kinds of perspectives and experiences, and we get to, when you go to a new place, you get to learn how something else looks in the world, how something else is done in the world, right? And you just get that sense. But then also, I think the physical act of traveling, the going somewhere, right? It kind of enlivens your spirit of adventure, and I think that all of these things, like getting outside the box, thinking outside the box, bringing in new perspectives, having more sense of a broader culture, different cultural experiences. And then, that sense of adventure, that act of doing, the learning by doing in a sense as well. All those things are really formative to, I think, building an entrepreneur's mindset, whether you're actually going to go out and start a company one day or whether you just want to have that more of an entrepreneur's mindset. Collecting a lot of these kinds of different experiences is really impactful, and meeting people and building relationships. And what's cool is I kind of take this for granted a little bit. It kind of just happens over time. But every time I visit a new place or spend quality time somewhere, right, you meet people, and nowadays it's like, oh, what's your Instagram handle, right? And then and there are days I'm just sitting here and I'm looking at, oh, yeah, that person I met 2 years ago, in Guatemala. Oh, look what they're doing today, right? Maybe I met them on one day. Maybe we shared weeks of experience together. Whatever it is, we kind of keep up with people, and I can look at this, and it's almost like a Rolodex of people in Argentina and Guatemala and Colombia and Mexico and Europe and all sorts of places. That's also the great advantage of being in a place like South Florida, really close to Miami here, is my gosh, we can meet people almost anywhere, any day of the week. It's a little bit easier to get to Miami from almost the entire world than it is to Argentina, but a lot of people still go to Argentina. And you also said something earlier here in one of your last comments. You never know where life is going to take you, but I do know where life is going to take some of us in the next couple of weeks, and that is the beautiful country of Argentina on a Fearless Journeys adventure. So we're going to see you. We'll be with you very, very soon, Ale. So we look forward to seeing you there. We have spent a lot of time here talking, and we could continue having more conversations if we allowed ourselves to. But between somebody who's half Cuban, part Irish, and somebody who's Argentinian, we probably should just wrap this thing up right now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to get a cigar. But we'll,
yeah.
But anyway, Ale, I know where you're at. Dinner time is many hours away still, right? So that's one thing all of our travelers have to get used to is those late dinners, because the Argentinians really they don't even like.
We eat late, yeah.
You want to eat at 8? That's kind of early.
We eat late. Yeah, it's going to be my time's going to be 9. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, great. Well, Ale, thanks so much for your time here. Thanks for all you do for Fearless Journeys, and we look forward to being with you soon. Thanks again for being an agent of innovation and sharing your story with all your entrepreneurial experiences. I mean, it's amazing because if you think about what we're doing as a community, we're not just traveling, but we're trying to help build an entrepreneur's mindset, and we get to come down there and hang out with people like you who are really emblematic of that entrepreneurial spirit. And so hopefully it'll rub off on us a little bit when we're around you soon.
My pleasure. I will definitely be. I'm happy to have you here. I'm definitely going to wait you guys to show you the last things here in Buenos Aires and for us to have a great time.
All right, sounds great, Ale. Well, we'll see you soon, and thanks again for being on the Agents of Innovation podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored. I told you before this, but thank you so much for having me, and it was a great chat, Francisco. Thanks.
Thank you.